It's been a long time coming. Before we
Yeah,
get it,
yes.
I'll get you out of here by within the hour. If you have anything scheduled
All
up.
good.
And can you just tell me how you pronounce your last name?
Yeah, it's Hootmer.
Perfect. As always, prefer to double check.
Yep.
Okay, well, thank you so
Yeah,
much.
of course. All good.
Thanks for making time for this. Welcome to the podcast. Before we get started, we always begin with the question, how do you keep yourself well?
Ooh, great question. I mean, I think it's finding balance in the chaos of things, from being a parent to work and everything else. So balance could just be making an effort to actually just chill out at home and watch a show at night rather than working on your computer, or getting some exercise in, or doing something fun with the kids. Making a meal. I like to make sourdough bread, so that's relaxing, even though it might be challenging at times for some. But yeah, I try to find balance in a few different ways.
Easier said than done, especially with family and work and all responsibilities. I love that. I'm so curious to know about your career, but I'd like to know first, when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Yeah, I think it went from the garbage man, which looked pretty cool at one point in time, to a firefighter, to a soldier, to a professional baseball player, to a whole variety of things. And then it wasn't until I guess my time at the Baseball Academy in Vauxhall, where you worked with a sports psych there, that really inspired me and really sparked my interest into getting into the field that I'm working in today. So kind of the typical boy stereotype interests as a kid,
Gone through many
into something a little bit more
iterations.
tangible as you grew up. So.
That's amazing. Take me back to your career as an athlete. How did you get started in sports and what was that like for you?
Yeah, so grew up primarily playing, I guess baseball was the main focus for my sport. Being in Canada and Northern Alberta, it was typically hockey, but just found myself really interested in baseball. Grew up playing in a small community that had a really rich culture and history in baseball, so it was kind of a natural attraction there, I think, to take part in the sport in that community. And then played school sports. Most like I think like most kids dabble in a little bit of volleyball, a little bit of basketball, badminton. You do your swimming lessons and everything else in the summer when the outdoor pool isn't frozen. So yeah, just a variety of things. But like I said, mainly baseball, and that eventually took me to the Baseball Academy in Vauxhall in year one, which is a specialized program where players from all over Canada move and train year round, attend the same high school, and work on baseball, both the physical, technical side of the game, and also the mental side. So it was a cool experience. Then that took me to play a little bit of college baseball for a part of 1 year. And then ended up just focusing on school after one season there. So that was a little bit of the evolution. A lot of great experiences in the sport that introduced me to a lot of people. So.
Oh, what an amazing experience as a young athlete. When did you know that you were going to transition from being an athlete to working with athletes?
Yeah, I think it was kind of a natural transition, in the sense of, was managing some injuries, and the kind of the last couple of years of playing. Also, just really wanting to, I guess, get life started, in the sense of focusing more on school, and kind of pursuing a career. So there was that natural timing of a loss of interest, maybe, yeah, due to some injuries in the game, and then, yeah, wanting to transition and getting something started at the time, which I guess eventually turned into this. So it was more of a not a forced transition, but definitely a natural timing, I would say, for sure.
Which is a big challenge as an athlete, especially if you're having injuries and, limitations with your body. I'm sure that's something that you work with athletes now on a regular basis. As an athlete, what do you wish you knew back then that you know now as a professional?
Yeah, I would say just be really patient. It's a long journey, and I think you want everything to happen really quickly, and you want answers really quickly. And I think being okay with not knowing and understanding that you're really kind of writing a book as you go, and some chapters might not be the most exciting, or some chapters might be a little challenging in your life, whether it be injuries or opportunities might not be coming your way, but definitely understanding that your life is one long book, and every chapter is going to be different, and some parts of the book might be a lot more exciting and positive. But yeah, every chapter of your life, I guess, has something to it that's special in some way, or some type of learning opportunity. But yeah, I would have told myself, hey, just be a bit more patient, and just focus on doing good work consistently, and usually good things happen.
Yeah, that's amazing advice. Did you encounter any specific challenges, whether mental, physical, with these injuries that you would now in hindsight have handled differently as an athlete?
Good question. I think just with the shoulder injury at a young age, wasn't necessarily common what I was experiencing. I think at the time, I think now maybe more so in today's game of baseball. So, it was definitely a mix of, okay, let's rehabilitate it this way, see what happens, and then rehabilitate it another way, and rest and compete, rest and compete. And I think maybe the move from the start would have been to be a bit more aggressive on the surgical side of things, to explore it a bit more. But at the time that, multiple doctors are giving you similar advice, so you just kind of trust the medical advice as you go. So, at the time, looking back, I don't think there wouldn't really be much more different that could have been done. So.
Yeah, it's just part of it. So tell me about your experience working with sports psych. I think that's amazing you had that from a young age, as it's often overlooked, maybe more so less in this day and age, but definitely as a competitive athlete, I was wrestling from 10 years old, and sports psych was not on the table for a long time and definitely would have been helpful. What was your experience working with a sports psych, and what was kind of the catalyst to inspiring that path for you?
The biggest thing I found is it's kind of funny, right? Like when you are working on something and doing it consistently, it typically works. And I found that when I was consistently doing, the work that our sports psych provided us, and was really buying into the education and the skills that she was teaching, um, it did help me. It did benefit me. And then as a young athlete, when you think you figured it out, sometimes you might stop doing what kind of got you to the dance, let's say, or what provided that little extra support to fuel that success. And I think at the time, maybe I thought I had things figured out a little bit, and maybe took my foot off the gas pedal. So, upon reflecting on what was really benefiting me in that period of time where I was finding a lot of success, I would attribute definitely the buy-in to the mental game as having impact, as well as other aspects of the game for sure. But seeing that, was enough for me to want to pursue this as a career. And then the idea of like, hey, I could get paid to talk to athletes and get to travel and go different places and get unlimited golf shirts. Why not, right? So.
Amazing. Just perk of the job. I would love to
Yeah,
know a little bit more about the steps that you took in education and the steps you took in your
sure.
career leading you up to today. Because I think for a lot of athletes listening, it's cool to know the jobs that still exist within sports and don't require you to still be a competitive athlete. If something like injury, for example, happens, it's so linked to identity. So this could be a really unique transition for people who are listening and inspire new career paths.
Yeah, no, I mean there's a lot of I guess options to go to get into the field. So just out of my personal experience, I went to the University of Lethbridge and did a Bachelor of Arts in psychology. So I spent a couple years at that institution and was very fortunate to have the opportunity to complete a variety of independent studies under one of the professors. So I was able to join her lab. At the time, it was the Emotion and Sport Performance Lab, and got put to work doing very basic assistant type roles, whether it be carrying boxes for surveys for the grad students when they're collecting their research, inputting data, learning a little bit of the inside roles that exist on the academic side, getting experience to start delivering very basic mental skills type presentations. So was exposed to both the academic and the applied side at a very early time, which was I was very fortunate for that. So in that opportunity of learning the academic and applied side, I definitely got a sense that the applied world of working with athletes in person rather than doing the research was more of my interest and area that let's say got me out of bed out of the morning. That was kind of what was exciting to me was getting in front of teams, working with the individuals. So from there, completed a master's in counseling psychology where I was able to complete my practicum with athletes. So I was very fortunate that my grad school allowed that opportunity to go outside of the norm, which is usually general population, and work with youth athletes at the time to develop that skill set so I could obtain my grad school master's. And then after that, joined the Canadian Sports Psych Association. At the time, it was a requirement of meeting a certain amount of hours, whether it be presenting in front of groups, working with individuals, note taking, reporting, meetings with your supervisor. So you apply for that process. You then get accepted to be a part of the association. At the time, it was in Canada a professional member. That was the level of designation. And over the last couple of years, in partnership with the Association of Applied Sports Psychology in North America, we moved to more of a gold standard, which is the Certified Mental Performance Consultant designation, so CMPC, which consists of the supervised hours and an official examination that's been standardized to provide a gold standard, essentially, in educating and letting the public know that individuals with this credential have met criteria to work in mental performance, whether it be in sport, business, military, performing arts, and so on. So that's a little bit of the pathway. And then more recently, I joined the Association of Counseling Therapists of Alberta as a counseling therapist as well. So just yeah, always continually trying to stay current and learn, I guess, because it never ends. There's always
That's
something new that's popping up.
Yeah, that's a long path to get where you are today. Did you always know that you wanted to help people as part of your career? Because when you talk about the things you maybe thought about doing as a kid, I feel like that is a running theme of being in service to others.
Yeah, it's funny. Like growing up too, I was told like, oh, you'd be a great teacher. It'd be good. You seem like you have the characteristics to be able to speak comfortably in front of groups, and I spent time, you helped coaching when you could. Worked at the Boys and Girls Club for a period of time during my undergrad as well. So always felt like helping people was something that I guess provided fulfillment, left you feeling good at the end of the day, even though there's some hard days as well with that. But yeah, I think no matter what direction I was going into career-wise, it would have been something human services related or involved with people. So
That's amazing. That's so fulfilling. And as you mentioned, you're a certified counselor. So not only in the mental performance game, how do you find life's kind of trials and tribulations impact mental performance when it comes to athletes?
yeah, great question. There's actually a really good model that's been developed. It's called the Gold Medal Profile. That's I believe it can be looked up online. It was an article that was published a few years ago. But in this Gold Medal Profile, they have the mental performance competencies within the inside of the model, but surrounding it, they have mental health. which is just a really great indicator that, just as much as we focus on, the mental performance side, mental health is just as important, just as physical health is as it relates to the physical performance side, right? If you were to wake up every day and your knees were sore, your back hurt, and you couldn't move that well, that's going to have impact on your physical performance because your physical health is impaired. Same thing mentally, and we don't really look at it the same way because it's not as easy to see as well, right? If you have a broken arm, it's pretty visible with a cast, or you've got a knee brace on, it's easier to accept, well, we can't expect this individual to perform at the level we expect them to due to the physical limitations. So with mental health, it is a bit more challenging because some of the symptoms that an individual may experience aren't outward, they're inward. So they might be feeling low energy. They might not want to get out of bed in the morning. Their engagement is lower. Their energy is off, and that's going to have impact potentially on their mental performance. So when you have all these mental health challenges, let's say, or injuries, yeah, you're going to have an influence on the performance side. So, not only is it important to, yes, be able to use self-talk and imagery and set goals, but also life challenges and stressors need to be addressed and managed because those also have impact. And I think having that background in counseling allows you to have those conversations a little bit easier at times. And again, by no means do I want to paint the picture that I'm a clinical psychologist. That's another separate element and training and category of mental health support. But definitely being able to talk with your athletes on life related stressors is going to be a benefit because they can offload those conversations to free themselves up to maybe just focus on the mental performance side as it relates to their sport.
Hmm. Yeah, well, kind of zooming out, and I think that I'm sure can be so impactful for athletes to have those conversations where, we're worried more than just your performance, like you're more than just a player to us, because I think there can be so much self-induced as well as external pressure at such a young age in these sports. For someone who's never been to a performance coach, a sports psych, something like that, what does the process of working with you look like as an athlete?
Yeah, good question. It's, that's something that I think a lot of individuals are unsure of, right? Like it's a mental performance consultant. What's that? That's not a psychologist. And there's different ideas of what going into a therapy session is like. So yeah, it's unclear for a lot of individuals. For me, my approach is fairly, I don't want to say laid back in the sense that it's unprofessional or not effective, but I definitely just want to have a conversation with my athletes. So that first meeting is, who are you? Where are you from? Tell me about growing up playing your sport. When did you know that you wanted to commit to your sport in the way that you are? What are your goals? What can you do really well? What are some things you're working towards? So it's just a very generic opportunity to get to know that individual and not just talk about sport right away. It's, hey, what did you do growing up? Where have you lived? Tell me about school. What do you like about school? Not about school. What do you do to hobbies, interests? So it's just, yeah, let's get to know you as a person and talk about sport as well. So there's a little bit of that exploratory introductory first meeting that's, I find really breaks down that barrier that some individuals might have. They have a stereotype that it's, let's just talk about emotions and what's wrong with you and why aren't you playing well? What challenges are you experiencing? And you sit down and have a conversation like a normal human being. It helps. And I'm not saying that other professionals aren't normal human beings, but at times there could be barriers when it is a very direct conversation about what's happening and what's wrong with you. So yeah, just being able to connect at a human personal level for me is really important in that first meeting. And also give an opportunity for those clients to get a sense of what my energy is like in vibe and approach, because it's not going to work with everybody. So giving them an opportunity to mull it over after that first meeting to go, yeah, I want to continue to work with this individual, or maybe this isn't the right fit. And then on top of that, you provide kind of similar to most other professions, might be a questionnaire, an assessment of some type, based on the approach you like to utilize. And then from there, it's, we're working session to session, addressing what the athlete wants to work on. So maybe right out of the gate, they want to talk about preparation and routines. So, okay, moving forward, that's going to be the next meeting. They might want to talk about self-talk. They might want to talk about imagery. Maybe they have no clue what they want to talk about. They just want to develop their mental game. So then you're using maybe some questionnaires and assessment to better be a bit more targeted and accurate in those first steps in working with that individual. So it's very flexible, it's moldable. I tend to avoid the 5-step fix type of approach because every individual is unique in what it is they need to work on. So yeah, definitely trying to meet the athlete with where they're at, with what they need, and make it fit for them. That's essentially the first kind of steps into it, and then you get to work. And the goal is to be consistent with it as well. So meet with an athlete every other week, a couple times a month. Have the door open for a quick conversation if they need to. Maybe it's a 10-minute quick conversation before a tournament, they just want to check in, or it's a text message like, hey, this happened in practice today, next time we chat, can we talk about this? Perfect, sounds good. So it's a variety of ways to stay connected and engaged, in between those more typical formal 45-minute to 60-minute conversations.
That's amazing. Just giving that space to be comfortable as well. How old are athletes when they generally start working with you?
Yeah, right now in my private practice, I would say that U15 age range, at 14-year-old age is the youngest, up to, individuals in their professional leagues that they're competing in. So it's as young as around 14 is where you're starting to see that interest really peak, in my experience, and then as they get older, for sure.
And how amazing to see people through that journey, through so many various stages of life as well, working alongside them. What's your day to day like working with the professional teams that you support? Because that's a big part of what you do as well.
Yeah, so the work with the Sask Entertainment Group, being Saskatoon Blades in the Western League, the Berries with their baseball academy, and their summer collegiate team in the Western Canadian Baseball League, and this year with the Rush in the NLL, which is going to be an exciting endeavor. First year with them and the Berries. It varies. It's definitely unique. I do live outside of the community, so I travel in to work with the teams for anywhere from 3 to 5 days in person during the month, and then when they're on the road, I'll meet them as well. So I am situated in Alberta, so when they're competing in Alberta, I'll try to meet them locally in Calgary, Lethbridge, Medicine Hat, Red Deer, and work with them on the road. So it could be simple as hanging out, going to team breakfasts, team meetings, being a part of team meals, practices, pregame skates, workouts, just being around and being visible, because you're trying again to break down that barrier of some random person in an office that's a phone number on the website that you only talk to when things go sideways. So the more that you're around, it makes you more human and more real as a practitioner. And then the athletes are more open to reaching out to you because, oh, I know that guy. He's around. He's a part of the grind with us. At moments during the season. So um, that's what it's like when I'm in person. When I'm away, it's could be a text message from a player, hey, can we chat? Could be the odd Zoom call, delivering a group presentation if that's something the group wants. Phone calls from the coaching staff and providing some input on maybe some questions they have, or some guidance as it relates to some of the culture type stuff that we've developed and that we're working on. So yeah, it's a variety of when I'm in person, you're around hanging out, maybe going for a coffee, um, doing quick little intervention type meetings, standing at the side of the boards before a game. It could be in the locker room, sitting one-on-one. It could be sitting up in the stands. So it's very kind of, where can we meet and have a conversation and help them out. So yeah, it varies. It's all over the place.
How dynamic for you, I'm sure there's never a day that's the same, and also great just to give the flexibility to those players. What are some of the primary challenges you find yourself supporting athletes through? Do you find there's like three main themes or issues that are kind of generally coming up within all athletes?
Yeah, I would say one that I feel like I've been talking about a lot lately is, feelings of confidence. Maybe they're struggling with play right now, so they're trying to find that feeling of being able to, do what they've done in the past without thinking about it, and not worrying about being judged by other players or what their coaches think. So that has come up in some conversations more recently. Um, sometimes players feeling a bit anxious about the future. What does it look like moving forward? In the Canadian Hockey League, they just announced that players can now go to the NCAA and pursue hockey. So even more options for players. And, I was traditionally going to try to go professional or go play hockey in Canada at the youth sport level. And now they add this other element. So that's always a conversation of what does hockey look like for me outside of what I've been doing for the last couple of years. Um, and just general, the the fundamentals too, right? Really trying to help athletes focus on what they can manage from a day to day, and really trying to stay, I hate saying it, process focused, right? I think that word's used so much, focus on the process, process this, process that. But as much as it's used, it is really important, right? And trying to keep athletes staying away from getting too sucked into outcome of, of points, scoring goals, pitching stats and hitting stats, and really trying to lock in on how's our practice habits, how are we being day to day, are we doing a lot of little things consistently, and focusing on that. So it varies, but those are kind of some of the things I feel like I've been talking about a lot lately.
Yeah, easier said than done to focus on the process and not the outcome, especially as small human putting so much pressure.
Mhm.
And you work with some older athletes as well. And I'm sure there's a lot of common challenges through these different transitions, as people are getting closer to, the more competitive, more professional range. Do you have any specific tools or exercises that you could share that you often find yourself using with athletes or practices to recommend?
Yeah, it's interesting. Mindfulness. I mean, it's everywhere. Everyone talks about it in a lot of different domains and professions. Um, I'm maybe it's a barrier or blind spot for me, but I tend to be quite skeptical when there's some type of tool or skill or something that comes out and like everybody's super excited on it and everyone's talking about, like, for example, grit. Everyone talked about grit forever, like grit this, grit that. And, I'm always just kind of like, okay, let's dial it back. Let's try to look at this a little bit more here and try to really get an understanding of it. It's even a problem for me when you look at popular TV shows where it's like, oh, when Game of Thrones is really popular, I was like, okay, is it that good? And it took me a couple of years to finally like try to watch it, and a great show. So, it's a bit of a blind spot for me, but for a long time it was mindfulness, 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 and trying to be an evidence-based practitioner. The evidence is pretty clear now that mindfulness is a really effective tool. Not saying I never used it in the past. I definitely did, but as I've worked with more athletes individually, and have seen the effects of it, I would say mindfulness is something that I feel like I need to introduce regardless of the interest level of the athlete. I go, hey, research doesn't necessarily care about your feelings. The evidence doesn't necessarily care about how you feel about this. It's pretty clear that having some type of mindfulness practice or skill set can be an advantage to you. So I will throw that at my athletes. And I specifically use an approach called mindful sport performance enhancement, which was developed by some practitioners, specifically looking at how to implement it in a sporting context. So it's a nice program, week by week, introducing different mindfulness exercises. And with my athletes, again, trying to meet them with where they're at. Like, hey, how did you like this 30-minute body scan? I did not like it. Okay, cool. That's fine. Why not? let's discuss what other type of exercises we can try, because again, the research is pretty clear. Mindfulness is extremely effective. So how can we try to make it work for you based on your interest with it? So that's one. Another one I find myself, it's old school, but it works. It helps really bring good perspective, is this really basic idea of the ABC model of self-talk. Comes from cognitive behavioral therapy, I think, maybe rational, emotional. I don't know. It's all the acronyms.
Too many
But
theories.
it's simply like looking. Yeah, I know. Like exactly. So it's like just looking at, okay, what's the activating event or adversity that you're currently experiencing, and then looking at your beliefs associated with that. And we have positive or more productive beliefs and negative or more debilitative beliefs, and then what are the consequences to those beliefs, emotionally and behaviorally, as it relates to this event. Because at the end of the day, you know you not getting the playing time you want or getting scratched 3 games in a row is just the event. That's all it is. It's now the belief that you attach to it that has kind of impact
Mm.
moving forward, right? So if you're attaching a negative belief, such as, well, coach doesn't like me, things aren't going my way, um, I suck, this is terrible. Well, we're going to open the door to increase the chance of having negative consequences in our emotions and our mood and how we feel, and then how we're going to now act within the team and personally when we're alone. Versus the event being, right, I've been scratched 3 games. Well, how can we have a more positive, productive belief in the sense of being more open-minded, growth mindset, embracing the challenge, a challenge mindset, and looking at how can I take that direction, and then, having, hopefully, in theory, more positive um, consequences both in our emotion and mood. So that's always a nice activity to work with athletes. As well. So there's a few different approaches. I mean, imagery is fundamentally a great tool. So definitely working with athletes on the fundamentals of that. How do you produce good images? How do you do it? So on and so forth with that. Yeah, but I really find myself right now, mindfulness, non-negotiable. You got to give it a go, give it a try, see how it works. Try to teach athletes how to work through some of those challenging beliefs that they might have, and then, imagery and some of the basic, more mental tools that can be used, relaxation, breathing techniques, so on and so forth.
That's amazing. I love that ABC model because whether athlete or not, that is just a great practice for anyone to use, to stop that maybe catastrophizing. Like, okay, we could shift the belief and shift
Yes.
the consequence. Do you also find yourself talking about things like sleep, social media use, like some of these other things that are so impactful for you?
Yeah, for sure. Sleep is definitely something I do have a conversation with my athletes. Again, not being a sleep expert myself, the knowledge base that I have is very fundamental, very safe to talk about. When it comes to times where I'm countering work with an athlete who is really struggling with sleep, then that's where I need to make a referral. That's just a really good practice to do professionally, is when you get outside your lane, call for help. So fortunately, haven't really run into that too much. But yeah, sleep is some performance coaches, they're saying that's number one on the list, right? Because if we're not sleeping, that's going to take away our recovery. That's going to have more performance detriments than benefits. So it's, yeah, sleeping, napping. How do we nap efficiently? Our sleep hygiene, getting ready for bed, what does that look like? Limiting screen time and so on. So yeah, sleep is definitely a conversation that is had. And then just checking in too, like, hey, how's your diet? How do you feel? Are you getting the right fuel into your body? And not in the sense that I'm acting as a nutritionist or dietitian in any capacity, but just checking in, like how are those behaviors that relate to performance and can impact mental health and mental performance, right? Like, are you getting enough water? Are you drinking enough? No, I'm not. Okay, get on it, right? Because dehydration has performance impacts, and impacts on our cognitive performance too. So, checking in kind of on the holistic aspects of everything, just opens up that conversation, because they say, you know what, maybe I need to work on my nutrition. Okay, well, let's find you some support in that. and make a referral there. So it's also having a team of individuals in your inner circle that you trust that you can refer to for when those pop up in a conversation. Because again, yes, we're talking mental performance. We're also talking life in general too at times.
Well, and it's so interconnected, those things can't
Mhm.
be divided. How does a parent know if their child would benefit from help? How do you find parents get to that point of making the decision for the child, or is it something that the child is often seeking out?
It's both. It's definitely both. So, emails will pop up in my inbox. So I'll get a text message or a phone call, and it could be from the player's agent or their advisor saying, "Hey, the parent of my client is looking for someone to work with their child in sports psych because they feel like they need it." And it could be the athlete themselves are asking for it because they're feeling like they aren't playing at a level high enough that they want to. Maybe they're struggling. It could be the coach of that individual saying, "Hey, it'd be really beneficial for you maybe to talk to somebody." Um, then there's the sometimes the odd conversation of like, "Yeah, I've been told I should do this, but I don't know what it is." So then it's the okay, fair enough. Let's try to educate you on what it is. And then there's straight up just the person who's like, yeah, I work on everything. I really want to work on this. Let's see what can happen. So it's definitely a variety for sure. It's a mix of the athlete wanting it, the parent suggesting it, the coach suggesting it. So it's really a mixed bag. I don't really have any percentages off the top of my head of kind of what those referrals look like
Well,
specifically.
I was just thinking, it is something that maybe is often a reactive reach out, whereas there would be a lot
Yes.
of benefit to be, a proactive reach out. But I'm sure that's becoming more and more common as well, where it's just, there's way more it's like mindfulness, like there's way more word of mouth about it. Like we know everyone can support or benefit from mental health support. So have you found that shift, like more people just have you kind of in their corner on call to get ahead of this versus waiting till it feels like it's a crisis?
I definitely have. I would say for my older players, that's been the relationship. It's like, hey, I know this is important. Be good to have you in my corner. Let's work together. Sounds great. And then I just text them, check in. Hey, how's it going? What's going on? How are things? And then they might say, yeah, you know what? Let's meet next week. Okay, great. It might be a text message from them. Hey, can we chat tomorrow? Potentially, right? So I feel for my older athletes, maybe the late teens, early adulthood to those professional type players, they're definitely more proactive on it. Because by that point in time, from my perspective, they've heard a lot about it. They've been open to it or they've been exposed to it. And now they're starting to realize that this is just a part of the game. Whereas the younger players are definitely getting pushed and it's a bit more reactive in some of the younger age ranges. But I would say for the most part, yeah, phrasing it that way. It's funny. I do have a slide in my PowerPoints that I show of like proactive. We're very proactive in things like physical recovery. We're very proactive in things of nutrition, the strength side, the skill development, but yet we're not very proactive on working with and supporting the thing that governs it all, right? Our brain and our mental side. So definitely still very reactive. But you alluded to it, right? Is starting to become a lot more accepted. And I think with that, just better understood for sure. Because I don't think in the mental health and mental performance space, we've done a great job of educating the public on the different types of providers, right? There's psychiatrists, there's clinical counselors, there's masters in social work experts, there's registered social workers, there's registered counselors, there's psychotherapists, there's counseling therapists, there's mental performance consultants. So it's just like, where do I go? Who do I talk to? What am I doing here? So it's a very um maybe challenging world to navigate at times, and I think we're starting to do a really better job at clarifying the different roles in where we all fit in comparison to the physical side, right? I think most people have a really clear understanding of strength coaches do this, athletic therapists do this, physio do this, sports medicine does this. Surgeons and specialists do that, and they kind of understand where they all fit, right? And I think with the mental side, um, generally people are starting to get a better idea of where we fit. So I think that's helping as well too.
Absolutely. And I was reading that when you started out, you were studying stress and coping in the transition into kind of the sports academies.
Mhm.
Um, and how do you find young people usually handle those transitions? Because in, these junior leagues, we're often treating them like young adults. I'm from a small hockey town, and when I was in high school, half the school was like living off on their own at 15 at a billets, like really being forced to kind of step into a different level of maturity much more quickly than they would have otherwise. So I can imagine that transition and being pulled away from your, normal base is incredibly challenging.
Yeah, and it is for some individuals. And I think a part of normalizing that is trying to educate these young players that you can be homesick, right? Like it's okay to be sad that you miss home, and normalizing that type of emotional experience. It's okay. Let's acknowledge that, right? There, you're not less manly, right? The masculinity stuff because you miss your family, right? That's probably a good thing that your parents have done a good job in creating an environment that you don't want to leave. So shout out to them. But the idea is like, okay, so you're experiencing this emotional response, and you wouldn't talk to the athlete like this, right? So this emotional response you're experiencing wouldn't be the approach, but you would talk about, okay, like this is normal. Let's learn some skills to cope with it, to manage it, right? Because you want to be here and a part of this program or a part of this opportunity to become a better player. So let's learn the skills to manage it, right? And what does it look like to cope in this type of experience? Because later on in life, you will be stressed out and will need coping skills. So it's taking that challenging time for an athlete and helping them learn the skills to manage it. There are instances where some athletes do go to some environments that are quite unrelenting and very challenging and might not be um, really a good place for them because the resources might not be there to support them on top of trying to teach them emotional coping skills. So at that point in time, sometimes it is best for that athlete to remove themselves from that environment. So there are moments where, you are away from home. It is challenging, but you also have a ton of great support. So you can probably manage it and get through it. And there are some places where it's like, you know what, this probably isn't a great fit. And it's not your fault, right? It's not because you're not able to manage it. It's just maybe not the best for you and might not be as advertised potentially as well. So then it's also helping an individual transition back to home sometimes too, which is something I've encountered as well.
Well, just how incredible to have you there in their corner to help with all of that decision making. Do you also work with solo athletes? Like, you obviously work very often with team athletes, but are you working with endurance athletes, people who are more working on solo sport?
You know what? I haven't engaged with the individual sport athlete as much. I'm primarily working with athletes in that sporting context, and it's been mainly hockey, baseball, and some lacrosse athletes. So it's interesting. I find myself working with those types of sport teams. I haven't engaged much with the individual sport athlete as much. So I think a part of it is kind of, what's that saying? Master of none or
Jack of,
something, where it's
Jack
like
of
you
all
kind of want to
trades,
build in.
master of none. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like I think trying to go with, there's a lot of great practitioners out there, and I think there's practitioners who grew up playing solo sports, right? And I have colleagues who that was their environment was maybe golf or figure skating, swimming, where it's just them and not the team environment. So that when they work with those athletes, it's easier for them to speak the language and relate to the experiences. Where for me, it would be very challenging to relate at times in working with those athletes. So, yeah, I think just through the teams I work with and my experiences, naturally gravitating to just getting the team-based athletes.
Oh, absolutely. And what is next on the horizon for you professionally?
Uh, Try to get those CEUs that your associations want. I think that's always kind of the next challenge is just trying to maintain that professional development and you know, being aware of, okay, let's try some different approaches or techniques, right? And not always being super comfortable in doing the same things all the time. It's something right now I think I'm always reflecting on is like, okay, I talked about that type of concept with a different athlete like the fifth time this month. Like, am I using this too much? Like, is this becoming, could this be detrimental? Like, I'm not throwing enough flavor into the different conversations. So that's always something. I think one thing that I've been playing around with is the use of artificial intelligence, and utilizing that as a way to, yeah, just improve the service delivery. So whether that's playing around with ChatGPT and building your own AI chat bots or GPT models based on different concepts, uploading the journals, published journals, and playing around and seeing, what you can get out of that. That's been fun, a little side project, and yeah, starting to kick the tires on developing maybe a business where providing assessments and looking at how can you provide really good quality support through questionnaires and assessments for teams and individuals. So, yeah, starting to fire up conversations with that with a colleague, very entry level on that. But yeah, always something going on. And on top of that, also parenting and running around to different rinks at 7:30 in the morning and hanging out that way. So it's always something happening.
Amazing. Well, your athletes are lucky to have you. Before you go, I have a few quick rapid fire questions for you. The first being, who is your biggest role model?
Oh, I would say professionally, I've had two. Dr. Charlene Orr was the individual who really gave me that opportunity to pursue this at the academic level in university. I'm not afraid to say I wasn't the greatest student at time. I wasn't the strongest GPA until I really found that pathway of, okay, what does the future look like for me, and was able to set my eyes on the target to what this looks like. So she definitely gave me the opportunity where I don't think a lot of others would have. So big role model there. And another role model professionally would definitely be Kirsty Gillaretto, who was the sports psych in Vauxhall when I was there as a jet, who was my first exposure to it. So I was really fortunate to have worked with her, and then also her being able to supervise me in my master's as I transitioned out of sport and being able to keep that relationship. So, professionally, I have to say those two individuals were life-changing, for me in that way. And then also, have to say my dad, my parents, they worked really hard supporting me in my baseball endeavors and sacrificing a lot themselves, and not only in time but money, and trying to support me to chase my dreams, and just seeing them work really hard to make that happen. And we didn't live close to where we played, so there's a lot of driving, a lot of kilometers, and gas thrown in the tank to make it happen. So I would say, yeah, just you have those champions, on the personal level and then professionally. So yeah, grateful for having a lot of great support.
Amazing. What is the best advice you've ever received?
Do good work, and things will follow. I heard that in a presentation quite early on. I think it was during my undergrad. I saw, I believe Bernie Holiday was the sports psych who was up here talking. I believe he works with the Pittsburgh Pirates, and that was the advice he gave to young professionals, was just do good work, and like good things will follow, good things will happen. And I really stuck to that of, it doesn't matter if you're starting out talking to that U12 soccer team, like put in the effort to deliver a really good presentation on goal setting. Right. And you've talked about goal setting 1,000 times. Well, maybe look at that presentation 1,000 times, and how can you modify this or that, and just, yeah, consistently just doing really good work. I've found myself with opportunities that I never imagined, because the work has been good enough and has fooled enough people that you get, a random email or a phone call from somebody looking to have you do some work for them, or be a part of their organization. So, at the end of the day, just like our athletes, we're always telling, don't get outcome focused, focus on the process. As much as you want to, move towards that next opportunity or that next job or that next client or that next challenge, really focusing on, just do good work, and something should happen, I think. So,
Perfect advice. Best book or resource you'd recommend to people?
um, best book or resource. Uh, yeah, I mean, I have a ton of books that I haven't really read, to be honest. You just see them, you're like, oh, this looks great, and then you order it. So, for me, a book that's been really foundational and really impactful for me is that original Heads Up Baseball book by Ken Ravizza and Tom Hansen. It's funny, a lot of the concepts that were in that book I'm still using today. And you see a lot of other sports psychs using today. So even though the book, I think, came out in the mid 90s, I mean, I can look at it and find out, the basics still ring true. So I would say, for me, I always, I'm giving a presentation. Hey, if you don't want to work with me, read this book. It's probably going to help you out. So yeah, Heads Up Baseball. They have a new version, Heads Up Baseball 2.0. All good information. Yes, it's baseball specific, but you take that away, it's applicable to everything. So it's a really good, digestible, easy read.
Perfect. Thank you. Personal mantra or words you live by?
Oh, good question. You do some of the soul searching, values based stuff. I would like to say I'm original in the sense that I came up with these three. They're actually from the Heads Up Baseball Can Revisit the book, but some of the personal values I really look at is, fun and enjoyment. Like, am I enjoying what I'm doing? Am I having fun? Is it enjoyable for the players that I work with to engage with me in the work that I'm doing, either at a group level presenting or individual level? You want to be a good person. You want people to be around you, so that's important. Another one, it's exactly from the book, is definitely respect, having respect for everybody. Giving everybody an opportunity to share ideas, to discuss, to talk, respecting individual differences, respecting that this isn't an easy career, that it does take hard work at times and odd hours and traveling in planes that might be held together with duct tape, and who knows. So it's not always glamorous, but kind of respecting the grind, as some would say. And then also just having some pride in your work, and looking in the mirror and asking, like, am I proud of that session that I just delivered? Like, can I sleep at night knowing that I did give a good effort? Am I proud of that individual session I just did with that athlete? Was I engaged? Was I actually listening, or was I too tired because I stayed up too late the night before? Maybe cramming a presentation, or just being tired from being a parent, and all these other elements. So yeah, definitely, like, the values of fun and enjoyment, respect and pride have definitely been, I guess, just brainwashed into me since reading that book. So yeah, those are those three.
And last but not least, for anyone who wants to follow along and keep up with what you've got going on, where can they find you?
Yeah, that's the tricky part. I don't do a great job in posting. I actually kind of purposely take a step back in that regard. I kind of like to be in the weeds for my athletes, in the sense of there are some ethical considerations with that, some privacy elements that, some athletes don't want that information being shared, that you're working with them, um, especially with that gray area of mental health versus mental performance. What do we share? So yeah, if you looked on my Instagram, you would see no posts. You would have no one following me. It's just me following a few accounts. My LinkedIn has some generic information about my background. I don't have Twitter. I have a website that's very simple. So, if you want information, check out the website and reach out. But yeah, in a world that's really heavily social media dominant, where in my field of work, I feel that sometimes, social media trumps competence. If you're really good at posting and throwing out some really good sound bites, I think it hurts us more than benefits us at times. So yeah, I've just decided to just be in the weeds. And yeah, so it's contact me through my website, or word of mouth is
Well,
really
we'll
the way
link
we're
it.
working
We'll
out.
link
So
it just in case. And I am so grateful for this conversation. Thank you for
for
dedicating
sure,
this time, because I know both athletes, general pop, and parents listening will have, taken some really great advice away and will know where to find you if they need you. So we appreciate you. Thanks, Josh.